So welcome to the show today, Carly. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
How
Appreciate
are
it.
you doing? How is life?
It's great. I just drank a big cup of raw milk before this, so I'm feeling nourished. Yeah, just really been focusing on quantum health, which I know we connected a bit about that, and really just witnessing how much it's expanding my life. And I feel like that's just the freshest thing in my mind since it was my entire morning. So we can get a bit into that, but yeah, I feel just learning all the different things about health has been really empowering lately.
Yeah, 100%. So why don't we rewind the tape?
Yeah.
What happened for you? What was the journey that unfolded for you that brought you to this place where you're now so in tune and you've made so many positive changes with your healing, your health? Where did it all start for you?
Yeah. So I had like a very conventional upbringing and just classic, go to school, do the sports, do the things. And I feel like I just became to rewind that, I grew up like a very chunky kid, always wearing my brother's clothes. I literally wore my brother's clothes from age like 6 or 7 to 12, always a tomboy, overweight, sports. I believe that's probably where I had like a kind of disordered pattern of like my body dysmorphia and eating. So I actually started getting into health super young when I was 15 because I started looking into all the things. It was initially to lose weight. But then it kind of went down a little truth seeking rabbit hole, which turned to a bunch of different things like raw veganism and juice fasting and just being obsessed with weight loss and got into like eating disorders and that. And it really all just came from a place of wanting to be super healthy and look healthy. But one thing led to another. And I know a lot of your audience can relate to that, especially in this culture with social media and magazines and
Mhm.
TVs, not really understanding the subconscious programming that I was submitting myself to. So yeah, gosh, that was a whole thing. But really the journey started when I was 15 and went vegan. And I'm curious, were you ever vegan? Did you ever do the raw vegan thing?
I did, and it just trashed my digestion and it made my binge eating worse personally. When I had tried it, I don't know how was it for you when you did it?
Oh, I was super. So actually, when I went vegan when I was 16, and before that, I was really big into binging. So I lost all this weight going from middle school to high school, and then I was a three sport athlete with volleyball and softball and cross country. And I was just totally doing the MyFitnessPal, the 1,200 calories, which now studying female fertility is just absolutely wild how that is even a suggested thing by anyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I could talk about that for days. Also, it was at the same time where I was put on hormonal birth control, which it's so interesting how a lot of women in either their early 20s or late 20s now, or even early 30s, and we're all kind of on the same path of like going vegan and being put on hormonal birth control at the same time. I just noticed that really heavily in my community. And
Mhm.
now pretty much a lot of people aren't vegan anymore after having that experience of deteriorating and furthering binging and orthorexia. But yeah, it's just so interesting how those two things can quite literally like really disrupt the hormones fast.
Oh,
So
100%. Yeah. And maybe we should just dive into that first. What was your experience? How did it disrupt your hormones and what did you see in your community as well?
with veganism or hormonal birth control?
Both.
Oh my gosh. Well, I could talk about hormone. So basically, which is a whole pattern that I can see so clearly now, especially with a lot of women, is just being malnourished and having irregular cycles or eating unhealthy like seed oils and GMOs and non organic, and then not having regular cycles too. So then the gynecologist is like, oh, birth control, let's regulate rather than asking, what is your blue light exposure? Are you getting outside? Are you nourishing your body every 2 hours? Are you properly hydrating? And from a
Yeah.
quantum health perspective, are you creating structured water in your body by being outside? What are your daily thoughts like? So, of course, it's like a band aid approach. And yeah, I was just super malnourished and running 30 miles a week while having
Wow.
an eating disorder. So of course you're not going to have a normal period. And so then they just slapped the birth control on that, which made it a lot worse. But thankfully, that's when I started diving into holistic health and natural healing modalities. When I was 15. So I was actually only on birth control for a few months because the resonance in my body was an immediate, like, you need to get off this now. And I was already into meditation things. So I kind of credit it to being aware in that way. But I just really feel for, a lot of my friends that, were on it for 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, which they're doing okay recovering now. But, we just do the best with what we know.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I had a similar experience with birth control in 18, 19, 20, 21, and then luckily came off of it. But same with the vegan piece, you're just so malnourished. And with the weight loss and the cycle irregularities and the over exercising, like the subconscious programming that you mentioned earlier, like I don't think people realize how significant that programming is. I want to talk with you a little bit about that because it's like the repetition. People can't hear enough how much we've been programmed. Right. And the more people hear it, the more they can start to go, wow, okay, maybe this is significant and maybe there is change for me to make. So for you, what did you notice as you started to build awareness was the subconscious programming that you really took on that was creating your identity at the time, that was creating kind of this whole mess?
It's so interesting because I feel like it all started for me when I made a commitment to stop watching TV regularly, which I know can be pretty extreme for a lot of people. And so I definitely understand that. But when I was 18, that was like the last time I really watched regular TV. And of course, I'm not trying to suggest the extreme. That was just naturally what happened. I'm a very outdoorsy person and I left for college and after that never got a TV. But I started to realize that a lot of my eating disordered habits or my body dysmorphia was coming directly from the shows I was watching and the information and consumption I was taking from videos from the TV. And so I feel like from cutting that out, I felt like a huge spaciousness, like more spaciousness in my life where I could reflect on, the types of thoughts that I was having from social media and TV and movies. And also, I was a very extreme kid as well. I'm very like Gemini. I was 14, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to save for breast implants. I'm going to save for this. I'm going to save for that. So very, just very easily persuaded in that way. And, my mom, my poor mom. Oh my gosh. I was like the kid where she's like, Carly, don't get any piercings. And I would come home with like 3 ear piercings on each ear because I just felt like when I wanted something, I did that. And I'm really grateful that I never went ahead and did like the breast augmentations and stuff because I have a lot of friends with breast implant illness. But anyways, so again, just realizing where was that coming from where I wanted to get these surgeries when I was 14 years old. Like that's a pretty abnormal thing to even be thinking about, I guess. But then when you look back and you see the type of media that is in front of your face at that time, I'm like, oh, of course those thoughts would start popping in with high school insecurities and all the things. So that's kind of what the spaciousness provide for me. And then it kind of just went down a rabbit hole of really self-inquiry and thinking about, just not even the health of me, but the health of the planet, the health of the food system, tap water, and kind of went down a bigger path of trying to seek truth and like, what is the truth and how are our bodies supposed to be in this environment? How connected are we supposed to be with nature? Kind of just went from there. But really, that's kind of one of the pivotal places of where it started.
Yeah. Quitting TV. And like you said, it's not for everybody, but we quit TV and Netflix and everything like over 3 years ago. We never had cable, albeit like getting rid of all the rest was great. And I noticed a shift in my vibration, it significantly increasing when we got rid of Netflix and stopped watching movies. And then funny story, the listeners know this, but March 2020, 7,000 songs on my phone just disappeared. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get, and I couldn't get them back. And then a couple months later, we like really got the frequency emission from music and TV and like all this stuff. And I'm like, holy, like, no wonder it all got deleted. This is the universe, divine intervention, right? And again, the vibration just going up and becoming more in tune and the pineal decalcifying more. So I so commend you. And yeah, we're not TV people either. And I mean, it's each to their own, like,
Yeah.
but you just notice a huge difference and then you can really see the programming and how much of it comes from, right? And like, still to this day, like, and I feel like it's worse, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like with the Botox and the facial plastic surgeries and the breast augmentation, the butt augmentations, like it's insane. And I think because it filters on social media plus reality TV and Hollywood still, like it's just women are at younger ages. Like I'm seeing women on social media that are like 18 to 25, like getting Botox. And I'm like, girl, like you don't need that. What are you doing? You know what I mean? I mean, each to their own, but
Right.
it's
Yeah.
an epidemic, I feel like right now.
Yeah. And, it takes away from individuality, which,
Yes.
is the beautiful thing of, not everyone needs to have these like big, busty breasts, this perfect, like Brazilian lips. I mean, that's just not life. And I
No.
feel like it's creating this status quo of everyone morphing into the same appearance.
Yeah.
And you notice when people start to go down that rabbit hole, and of course it is super linked to Snapchat filter.
Yeah.
Watching that media, it becomes even more present and obvious, as you know. But yeah, it is really sad to see like 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds thinking that they have to manipulate their body, but it's just the water that we're swimming in.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why it's so great when women like us kind of speak to the contrary, because they are being inundated with all of this morphing of their face and editing and AI and the actual toxic side, and not the awareness of the actual truth. So I think there is this big awakening right now of women being like, okay, this is actually true. You don't have to do that, because the reality is within the self-love movement, there's like this, oh girl, do whatever you want, do whatever makes you feel good, whatever loves yourself, whatever makes you love yourself. But for some people that looks like butt implants, breast implants, Botox, facelift, chin implant. And in the name of self-love, like, is that really self-love, or is there a traumatic layer there?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the question that we need to be spreading and asking ourselves more, and getting really honest with ourselves is there that traumatic layer? Because even if you aren't eating, like there's all different kinds of self-harm. And to me, that is one of them. The body is so divine the way that she is, and we're not meant to be doing these things, and each to their own. People are going to do what they're going to do. But right, we didn't see this big craze until the Kardashian era. And obviously everyone knows how much I don't like the Kardashians and what a negative influence I think they've been. But that's when we started to really see, I think, just this massive influence, right? Aside from filters. So the self-love movement, and, women like just being able to express the embodiment of being yourself, and like being immersed in nature and doing what you love, and just sharing that. I think that's just so contagious and magnetizing, and gives other women permission that they can step into that too. You know what I mean? So that's why I love watching you on your Instagram and things, because it's just like, yes, like you're just fully emitting this authenticity, right? And loving what you're doing, and so immersed in your world. And knowing that you came from a background of like self-sabotage with food and body image issues, right? It just goes to show you the transformation that has happened. So tell me a little bit about, like, okay, you're in your early 20s, or when did you decide, okay, vegan isn't working for me? Like meat is actually good for a person. Like I could not survive without animal protein.
Yeah. So I originally went vegan when I was 15, and it wasn't actually until a few years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago now, I guess, that I started like to sneak in eggs and to sneak in animal protein, because I had created this whole platform online about veganism.
Right.
And I was in a relationship with someone, and we were both vegan. And actually, what's really interesting is I've been reflecting on my past and looking into like the self-sabotage and self-punishment through eating disorders, and how that led to me being in like a pretty abusive relationship for a long time. And I just want to bring this up in this podcast just because we don't have to go too deep into that, but I've just been noticing that the more people I talk to about being in abusive relationships, it comes back to self-worth, self-punishment issues, and also common patterns of eating disorders. So the self-awareness there has been a really big thing for me to reflect on. And then I kind of just had an awakening that really me being in this relationship and me being vegan was a form of another form of self-punishment, and the eating disorders was self-punishment. So what was the deeper underlying root there that I had to uncover? So it was such this deep, deep work. And so it actually wasn't until I started to do EMDR therapy is when I really started to uncover the deeper layers of trauma and nervous system regulation that I needed to do. And that kind of led to me understanding that the veganism was kind of just a cover up for some underlying issue, as well as the binge eating and the anorexia, orthorexia, and abusive relationship. And so stepping out of that was so hard, but also so powerful that I was able to really have that support from my now amazing friend. She's my therapist at the time, and really go through the processing in my brain and on a scientific level understand what was happening, because yes, so much of it is in the subconscious. And then as soon as I started to nourish my body and feel more grounded, less running on cortisol, I was able to make more satiated and nourished decisions and safe decisions based on like how I actually intuitively felt versus this fight or flight response. And so for those that like are on my Instagram, I try to really bring up trauma a lot on my page, because I don't think people realize that a lot of their patterns and I think this is really great that a lot of people are starting to recognize frequency and trauma in our subconscious and well-being. But yeah, it's a whole another layer to real self-discovery and self-inquiry.
Yeah, it is. And something that I really started to notice as well, is that when I was struggling with binge eating, I was attracting all these alcoholics and all these right? Mirroring the addiction issue, right?
Yeah.
So you start to go, wow, like there's that universal mirror. And then, yeah, you start to notice as you are in these, when you're in self-sabotage with food, you're dropping your frequency, and then you're feeling the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment, the judgment, right? The negative self-talk. And then what happens? Oh, well, then you step into this self-sabotaging behavior, and you go into people pleasing, and then you go and drink, and then you go and message an ex that is bad for you. And then you're going and go pushing the perfectionist mentality, and 7 days a week at the gym. And so again, when we're in these low vibrations, it's so much easier for us to just like map out into these other behaviors that keep us there. And so this is why I agree with you, the subconscious mind, working on the trauma and working really on shifting the mindset, that ego voice, that negative voice that just wants to hold us down, all of that is so key. So I love that you're, sharing a lot of that, because it is what's governing everything. And this is why I'm always saying, like, we just change the way you eat. It's not going to shift all of what's been going on inside of you. It's so much deeper, right?
For sure. For sure. And, as you know, and we both know, because we both talk about seed oils on our page and toxins in the water and what's going on, which is so great to dive into these truths. But yeah, if you're not doing the underlying work, you can eat as healthy as you want, as ancestral, in tune with earth, all the things. But if your nervous system isn't regulated, then you're just going to keep going back into those patterns, or that's just a possibility. And so to really recover, like it's so important. Yeah. Again, that self-inquiry, to really question yourself, and also be humble and willing to be like, okay, I was wrong. How do I evolve and change? And I think that's been the biggest thing of my journey, is like I actually love being wrong. I love when people prove me wrong. I love being like, oh, wow, I was so wrong about this. How do I evolve and move on? Because I tend to be someone who is like, kind of how I was talking about earlier when I was younger. If I want something, I go for it. I don't look back, and I'm a go-getter in that way. But also sometimes I get so tunnel visioned where, I need other people to help me like come back to earth a little bit. And so that's been nice to evolve and age and be like, okay, yeah, I'm actually really okay with being incorrect and moving forward, versus like stuck in the ways of thinking that, oh, I'm okay, or this modality is correct, or this modality is correct, and that's the only way. The black and white, just life is not black and white in general, especially when you get into the stuff we talk about.
Yeah, exactly. It's not black and white, but we're taught that with so many different things. And I think that's why going on a healing journey is also so profound, because we start to go, wow, I want to find the balance in the middle. And we start to learn that everyone needs something a little different, right? And what worked for me may not work for you, and that's okay. But what is, be willing to find the path. But we're sold all the cookie cutter stuff, right? And that's what is one of the things that keeps us stuck. Cause it's like, well, this celebrity or this big influencer with 5 million followers, or this brand is promoting this thing, this must be the thing to do. And I think this is where us using our discernment and, you know, like going, okay, but does that feel right for me, rather than, oh, this, because this, you know what I mean? Like that don't let the dopamine high make decisions. Let your intuition make decisions, because it can be so easy
For
to want to
sure.
hop on all these fad trains, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you said something key there about, um, just it made me think of bio individuality, like how everything's not black, white, everything is so individualized. You know, I have friends, one of my friends, Karen, she's going to be 76 years old and she has been vegan for 40 years and her body feels amazing. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like that is your experience. That's amazing. And then there's
Yeah.
people that are like, I can be paleo, I could be keto, I could be all these things. And that's why I love the piece of the quantum biology, the quantum wellness, because altitude matters, ancestral lineage matters, where you live currently matters with the seasons, the localness, the way your body is in, you know, is it, how's your cortisol? How's
Yeah.
your nervous system? Everything is so individualized. And that's where, you know, the frequency comes in, because we are all frequency beings and our surroundings is frequency. So everything is so hyper bio individualized. And so when I
Yes.
look at life through that perspective, it feels a lot more inclusive and less stressful, because really no
Yeah.
one has like the complete end all be all answers, because it's really complex.
Exactly. Why don't we talk about the frequency piece? Because I feel like people are just starting to kind of step into learning it and understanding the significance of it. We are energy. We vibrate at different frequencies, right? So tell me, like,
For
when you started
sure.
to learn about this piece, and let's talk about that pertaining to just environment and our well-being, I guess, first.
Yeah. So I am feeling so inspired about this conversation because I just got off a whole workshop about quantum biology and how just just the really depth of the science of frequency. And so I actually got into frequency about like 9 years ago when I went, that my friend Karen I just mentioned, she has a wellness center and they have frequency there. So I actually was my first time experiencing it and just witnessing what happened with her clients. I thought, what is going on? I'm so used to taking turmeric and all
Mhm.
these different supplements and thinking, oh, I'm so healthy. And I couldn't comprehend how frequency could support these things that I thought only like actually physically experiencing something, like taking it. And I think that's just that was from my understanding of conventional medicine. You
Mhm.
take birth control pills, or if you're from the holistic side, you take supplements. But in reality, understanding at the deeper level, everything is frequency. Our body resonates with certain frequencies, our organs play at a certain frequency. So that was like the eye-opening experience I had after using that device. And then it just kept popping into my awareness along my holistic journey. But I still had that resistance because, one, like frequency is technology, like the frequency
Right.
devices around their technology. Our phone's frequency, it's technology, you know, everything is that way. But yeah, I started to feel more resonance of using nature as frequency, like the actual science behind earthing and grounding, or the science of holding something that's copper and how that can make you like this water in your body structured, which can really help your cells and
Mhm.
mitochondria. And so, yeah, it kind of shifted my perspective of looking at health from a physical, like weight appearance level to an actual vibrancy resonance level that we can't necessarily physically see. But when,
Mhm.
you know, we all have someone in our life that you just love to be around. They are invited to everything. You're around them, you leave feeling amazing. That was like my friend growing up, Mary Kate.
Mhm.
She was just, everyone wanted to be around her, wanted to invite her to everything. She was just such a light in the world. And it's because her frequency,
Mhm.
you know? And of course, she's a beautiful girl, but like her actual frequency was just so profound.
Yeah.
And so looking at health from that perspective isn't something that people typically do these days because of the media and everything we talked
Mhm.
about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think people realize how much a lot of things we're doing are lowering our frequency. And then people get upset because they're waking up in a bad mood. They're reaffirming the negative thoughts and creating that reality that they don't want, but they don't even realize they're doing it, right? We're putting all this chemical stuff on our bodies and our skin, and we're eating things that you can't pronounce half the words, right? So it's like, we have been inundated with things to lower our frequency, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, intentionally, for
yeah,
sure.
intentionally.
Yeah.
Because it's a big energy and spiritual game, right? So,
Mhm.
so using frequencies, like, do you find you're more so like using, like you said, you use nature, right? So tell me a little bit about how we can all start using nature to support a better frequency.
Yeah. So I have been working with this woman named Kira, and she's actually this big, like, quantum biology spokesperson, essentially. And so her and I have just been chatting so deeply about quantum health. And, we hear it's so funny because when I was vegan, I got into the whole breatharian movement. Do you know about that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So you basically get nourished from the sun, which, there's truth to that in a way, because when you go outside, for example, when I wake up first thing in the morning, is I do not check my phone, do not turn on any artificial lights in my house. I get
Mhm.
straight outside, put my feet on the ground and look at the sun. And Kira explained this to me of what happens, of why that actually feels good. It's because your retina absorbs photons from the sun, which actually helps your body absorb DHA, and it helps your mitochondria and just like the
Mhm.
systems in your body function. So there's a deeper level of just health in this. But sometimes people think it's woo woo or tree huggers, but same thing with the tree. When you hug a tree, there's
Mhm.
actually a frequency exchange and a grounding exchange. And that's
Yeah.
why when people go camping, they feel so good after they go
Yes.
camping, because you're literally sleeping grounding, connected to the earth's frequency, and then you wake up without artificial light. And if you think about the average person, first thing they do when they wake up is look at their phone, artificial light, they turn on the light in the room, artificial light, maybe they get ready for work, so they're driving while it's still dark with a bunch of artificial blue light, and then they never see the sun. They go work a
Mhm.
9 to 5 under artificial blue light, eating bullshit food, miss
Mhm.
the sunset, or they go home, watch TV, and they don't watch the sunset and they go to bed. And then everyone wonders why they can't sleep and why their
Mhm.
hormones are whack and
Mhm.
why they are having digestive issues. In reality, no one's seeing the sun. It's
Mhm.
like, well, the sun has so many important, it has such an important effect on our well-being with our health. So, that's just not a common connection, because people think, oh, woo woo this, woo woo that, the
Yeah.
sun. But again, that's like a sunburnt conversation too. The people that like wear a lot of sunglasses outside in the summer, they get more sunburnt. And why? It's
Mhm.
because their body is not adjusting to what time of day it is with the sun. And they put on sunglasses, and that kind of tricks your body, like, oh, maybe it's 5 p.m., 4 p.m.,
Mhm.
because your body's not able to have those sensors be. Is that making sense? Did I
A
explain that
hundred
okay?
percent. Yes,
Yeah.
totally makes sense. And yeah, we've
Yeah.
started to do the same things, like, albeit there's been a lot of snow here, so the just going and putting your feet in the grass hasn't really been an option. But
Yeah.
I open the curtains right away to get natural light, and I don't turn any lights on, and then getting out and sitting on the step on the days where it's been nice enough. And right, like now, hopefully as the ground thaws, we can do the earthing. But it's simple
Yeah.
things that are so profound that make a huge difference. So I think that, yeah, everything you just shared is so powerful. And then how can we use other methods to support our frequency? Like, what else are you doing and what do you suggest?
Yeah. So where are you from, by the way?
I'm just outside of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So Western
Okay.
Canada. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up in Chicago, so like
Okay.
can
Yeah.
resonate with like the summer or the winters being like, okay, how do you earth? And so, I would still try to get out, even a couple years ago when like the gyms were closed and all that jazz. I would like go outside in like -5-degree weather, which I'm not going to necessarily recommend, but I was so desperate for that sunlight, my body
Yeah.
craved it. And so I would like walk around a lake and just try to like be outside and connect with the tree. So even if you can't put your feet outside on the earth, you can touch a tree, you can touch
Mhm.
plants, because they still are alive and have that electron, photon, neutron exchange going on. And so, but that being said, not everyone is living a life where they can just lay outside all day and camp like and be outside like our ancestors, walking in the sun, perfect cyclical rhythm. People have jobs and kids and all
Mhm.
the different things. So there are, like I talked about earlier, when I first tried the frequency device my friend had, that's why those things exist. And so for a while, when I was in my I'm still hippy dippy, but when I was like super hippy dippy, like anti-technology, everything, I kind of just realized that I can create a balance, just like how we're on Zoom right now and exchanging frequency through this frequency, and just kind of understanding that everything has frequency, and that it's really about utilizing the technology that we have for good. And there are so many different ways to upgrade the frequency and support your frequency and harmonize your body. A lot of people do sauna and red light. I use a frequency device called Healy. And that kind of just it gives you individualized microcurrents for exactly where your body is at. For example, like if your liver is not harmonized, it'll give you specific frequencies for your liver to come back into balance. And there's Rife machines, which is the frequency that my friend had that I used when I was younger. And those frequencies are actually in the Healy. But, there's a bunch of different devices out there. There's grounding mats and acupuncture, structured water. That's also a really interesting, that's kind of going into the workshop I just did before this podcast, the quantum biology, drinking structured water and talking about how our body actually makes structured water when we get outside and ground our feet in the ground and touch trees and touch plants and garden. So yeah, there's a really big balance of the tech side with the natural side. And I believe they can both coexist because we're not living outside 100% of the time like our ancestors. So
right. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing all of that. And I agree, there is that balance, and it's nice to have the access. And I agree, like getting out even in the winter and touching that tree or just getting the fresh air, it makes a huge difference. So let's shift a little bit to the food piece, because I know our food has been heavily manipulated, altered, attacked.
Yeah.
Farmers have been put through so much, right? I guess, what have been your biggest ahas about food, whether it's like permaculture, like consumption, the food industry? That's, I guess, my first question, and then I'll follow up with the second one.
Yeah. So I went to college and studied permaculture and intelligent food systems. And then I went off to Hawaii and studied permaculture more. So when I hear things like food shortage and all that jazz going on, it blows my mind, because I'm like, wow, I know how much food can be grown on such a small piece of land. So in reality, there should be no food shortages. Especially, I grew up somewhere where they like banned you from having chickens in your backyard for whatever BS reason. And my backyard was perfect for chickens. So, and it was not even in an HOA, it was in a suburb. So I just have a really big passion for explaining to people what permaculture is and how it can really benefit people. If even just one person from each neighborhood knew about permaculture and integrated it, they can grow so much food, depending on where they are. But there's permaculture for different climates. But anyways, yeah, it's just such an amazing way to have such a high yield to regenerate the soil. And so I think when I started to dive into permaculture more, that's when I stopped being vegan, because I recognize the animals are such an important role in our ecosystems. And I actually just got 12 baby chicks like 4 weeks ago, and starting to integrate the animal piece in my life more in person, because, egg shortage is going on. I'm like, okay, how do I just really maintain sovereignty and insurance and feel good and nourished and satiated and safe? It's really just taking accountability back into your own hands. And we're all in different situations, of course. So to someone that might mean growing herbs on your windowsill, and then maybe trading with someone down the road that has chickens, and, get to know your local food economy is just absolutely so important. But for sure, I'm really good friends with a bunch of permaculturists and farmers, and, they are very vocal about what they're experiencing and the truth. And so I'm really big on spreading that and helping people understand that really the solution is taking your power back and frequency back, literally. And that's how you take your health back and feel safe, and also like get back to things that actually matter, which is, like family and growing your own food and your health and your thoughts and your life, instead of all the other things they have us focused on.
Yeah. All the distraction. And this is so important. The more we can get to know those local farmers, grow what we can ourselves, and feed that local food economy that really cares, the more sovereignty and independence we have. We need to stop being so reliant on these big systems, right? Because we see what starts to happen when we are so attached to them. We need to learn how to be more in our power. So this is why this piece is so important. So thank you for sharing that. Where do you see food going in the next year, 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I follow so many like truther accounts. So, they post all sorts of things and so do I. But yeah, there's some things coming and it's very interesting because it's so far off from true like reality. And I think that because people are so far off from reality in their everyday lives, it's kind of hard for them to pinpoint that this is actually very extreme and the opposite of like how food is supposed to be. And so I think that through, I'm involved in the bundles online, the off-grid bundles and the permaculture scene online. So I know that so many people are diving into backyard gardening, guerrilla gardening, permaculture, regenerative ag. There's a huge movement of people leaving veganism and going to raw milk, pasture-raised eggs. So as much as there is this like darker frequency trying to infiltrate, I do see how the actual frequency of light and truth is winning. And I feel like because I'm focused on that, I see those wins. I'm starting to see those wins more and more every single day. And when I see people really focus on their hormones or instead of their body image, just their connection to the earth, their resonance, how they feel, how they make other people feel, connecting back to being more self-reliant, and there's so many ways to be self-reliant, like we talked about, turning off the TV, connecting with your local egg farmer, focusing on meditation. It kind of all leads to a very similar path. And that's what I love it. You're coming through this path through hormones and body image. And I came more from like the permaculture side, but now discovering body image. And then now you're discovering permaculture. So it's like, however we come, like we're coming to a very similar point. And yeah, I just think that a lot of people are just waking up so hard to this. And I truly just think we're at a point where too many people are aware of what's going on. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's not called the Great Awakening for no reason. And I just get such a good feeling every time I tap in. I agree with you. I think we're going to go forward to the space where farm to table is a term everyone knows, that everyone becomes fluid with their food and making friends with their local farmers and community and gardening. Like, I think we're going to see people just become so fluent in it, and it's going to become so localized. That's just what I feel is coming, like this high vibration ascension we're going through. This is what this is about, right? So we're being shown all the stuff and what was supposed to be, but we all came here to be like, heck no, we're going to shine our light and we're going to bring the revolution and we're going to, shift this around. So thank you for sharing that. I really agree with you. And it's an exciting time, and humanity's taking their power back, and it's great. So, okay, so I asked about that. So why don't we just dive a little bit into like maybe where can someone start if they're wanting to get into a little bit of gardening? Like maybe they have a small backyard or like a little bit of a balcony. Like what would you suggest is just an easy way to get into it?
Yeah, I grew up in Chicago, moved to Florida. So that's where I really got into permaculture. Hawaii, then went back to Illinois for a little bit. And now I live in the mountains. But, wherever someone is throughout all those places that I lived, for example, Chicago in the winter, some people just think, oh, it's too hard. You can't in the winter. Like that's it. But the truth is I thrifted indoor grow lights, so I could still grow things in the winter. And so I wasn't off of solar or anything, but I was gardening off of electricity, which would be cool to like take it a step, further, which would be solar. And so I'm not going to go too deep down the whole like electric solar, like Tesla rabbit hole, but for solar for that reason, I feel like is great. And anyways, so indoor grow lights, amazing. Putting herbs on your windowsill, Amazing. Starting, and that is also great for starting seeds in the winter that you can therefore bring out. So for people in Canada, like starting seeds like in March, April, even maybe a little bit in February. So you have the higher yields in the summer where you can really maximize your time in the summer. And then, you know, you get to harvesting and canning, fermenting, preserving. My really great friend on Instagram, and in real life, her name's Alexa, Sprouts on Sprouts, if anyone wants to follow her. She also has an account called The Sproutstead, and she does homesteading in Illinois. And so for anyone that's in a snowy climate like Canada, it's really great to watch what she's doing of how she grows and preserves, lasts all winter, and then does it this cyclical nature. And that is, again, eating super hyper local. So this is where, again, where the quantum health side comes in, because you want to eat super local for where you live. So, you know, she's eating super local and preserving and canning and really being self-sufficient, self-sustainable. And so that's where a beginner could start. Then to take a step further, get involved in your local Facebook groups. I'm in so many gardening groups on Facebook. See who's doing seed swaps for like non-GMO seeds, heirloom seeds, also who has chickens, and let's say you align with their chicken practices. You want to make sure they're doing all the right things, the animals that you want. So, you know, getting in community and like-minded community locally is so important. And I prioritize that wherever I go, to just support the people that I know are in alignment with my views. Like they deserve my dollar, you know?
Yeah.
And then from there, you know, just little things too. If you have a yard, planting fruit trees. I planted 2 apple trees in my parents' backyard, and elderberries, and there's yarrow and a veggie garden. And it's, a lot of it is perennial, which means it comes every single year. And then, also it's very easy to maintain. So, you know, those are like the beginning steps, I would say. And again, if someone lives in a small apartment, there's actually these girls that I'm friends with on Instagram. Their names are the Busy Homebodies, and they teach people how to homestead from an apartment. Amazing. Which is awesome. There's so many apartment homesteaders.
Love it.
And it's there's so many excuses out there. And I just love following people that are like gonna myth bust all the excuses, because the reality, life is hard and people have all types of stories, and like victimhood definitely has its place for sure. And trauma has its place, but it's all how you come out of that. And so I really enjoy following people that go against all odds and just kind of do it and show other people they can do it too.
Yeah, there's always a way. I love that. And we'll definitely have to make sure that we share those accounts, because we need resources. People need resources. It's so great that there's people who can easily teach this and it's easily accessible. Because one thing I realized, and then we'll wrap up after this, unless you have anything else to share, but we went to the grocery store one day in the small town that I'm from. And the poor girl checking us out didn't know what any of the produce was. And so she kept asking, like, what is this? What is this? And it was just so kind of shocking to go, oh my gosh, like people don't know their food. People don't know where it's coming from, right? There's been such a miss with farming and us connecting with our own food and growing some of it ourselves, and are connecting with the local community. So I do think that this is making a big comeback in a huge way, not a trend, that this is the flow forward. So I'm so grateful for you sharing your resources, and, you know, that you're teaching what you are as well, because it's so needed. And it's huge. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share today? Anything else for the audience?
Oh my gosh. You know, I just really want to like voice my appreciation for you for like having this platform in general to spread this information. And I'm really grateful for all the people that have taught me this information, because, you know, we're all here to story tell, and I'm just sharing stories and experiences that I've luckily and gratefully got to experience with some amazing humans that are just really passionate about spreading this info and making sure it stays intact in this world. So yeah, I'll definitely maybe send you a list of people you can include in the show notes that I think are essential accounts for your community to follow if they're interested in quantum health and frequency and gardening. I should try to have, like, my page is very not niche at all. Like, I'll be talking about frequency, then posting about my chickens, then talking about like thrifting. You know, I don't talk about anything like very niche, but I do have a lot of accounts that I follow and mentors that do. So yeah, I'll send you all of that info so people can really dive in.
That would be amazing. And where can everyone find and follow you?
Yeah. So I am pretty much just on Instagram. It's Rewild Carly Rose. And then from there, I have a link in my bio of kind of all the different places you can find me.
Amazing. Well, we will make sure that all of that is linked up in the show notes. Thank you so much for being with me today. It has just been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for all you are doing in this world. We're so grateful for you and your service.
Thank you so much.